Now that we've built all of the elements for this scene, let's start doing some renders. And you can see that I just used a pretty basic turntable style camera for this. I did this for all of the shots in my scene, and the way that I recommend setting up these turntable cameras, at least the way I like to do it, is to start just by dropping in a null that will be used for the pivot point of this turntable camera. So we're at the object level of our scene here. Just drop in a null, and then we can create a camera as well and parent the camera underneath the null. And we'll start by pushing this camera pretty far back on the z-axis. So I'll try pushing it back maybe 500 units. I'll call this render cam underscore wide because we'll be doing some close-up shots later, but this is just going to be the wide shot of the whole world for the moment. And let's view this through that camera here. And now we can move this null around to put the center of this camera pivot wherever we want it to be. And we can do all of our camera rotations on the null as well. So right now the camera is looking perfectly straight on this horizontal axis. So if we just change the X rotation, that will be the tilt of the camera here. And let's rotate this around in Y to frame this properly. Looks like we need to push the camera back a bit further. So go back to the render camera, adjust this Z accordingly. And for nice clean turntables, usually I just want to animate a couple of these parameters. So if we go to the start frame, we can do a bit of a push in or pull out with this Z axis. So I'll frame this out a little bit further, something like that. You can alt click that parameter to set a keyframe, and then let's go to the end of our timeline here. And in this case, I'm going to do a little bit of a pull out throughout the shot. So I'll push that Z-axis back just a little bit further, just to create a slightly more interesting camera move here. Alt click for another keyframe, and it's up to you if you want to use linear slopes on this, or if you'd like this to kind of ease in and out. In this particular case, I like leaving this standard, Bezier sort of, ease in and ease out curve there. But that's kind of a subjective preference, I suppose. And then we can do the same thing on this Y rotation here. I'll go to the start frame and set some initial rotation there. Keyframe that, jump to the end, and we'll set our end rotation. So I'm just going from -90 to -40 in this case, but of course feel free to do your own thing for this. And once again, for now, I will leave these sort of flat Bezier slopes at the start and end there. And now on the camera settings itself, if we go to the View tab, we can change this to our desired output resolution. I'm just going to pick HD 1080. But of course, depending on how much render power and time you have available, you can set this to whatever you would like. Don't feel obliged to deliver 1080 renders for this class. Totally fine to go lower resolution if you'd like. And I'm just leaving the focal length alone because I think this is all fine. And the near and far clipping planes, I'm not going to adjust until we start getting into the actual redshift setup, because the Z depth passes can pick this up automatically, and we'll look at that a little bit later. And when we flipbook the scene, this is what that camera move looks like, and this looks like it will work nicely for us. So now that we have this basic turntable set up, if you want to recreate this for other shots, an easy way to do that is to just duplicate your existing setup here. So then when we, for example, want to do the destruction cam, we can rename this to destruction, and then all you have to do is just set some new keyframes on your rotations, position the null differently, re-keyframe that the Z transform on the camera, and it's a little bit faster than just setting it up from scratch for your next shot. You will also probably want to disable the visibility on this null as well, just to get rid of this little point in the middle of your camera display there. So now that we're done setting up our camera for the shot, let's go ahead and look at setting up the actual renders for the scene.